What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. Hope you're having a great day, night, morning, evening, wherever you're at. Today, we got a good one for you. I'm here with my homie, Dominick. How's it going, man?
Pretty good. How about you?
I'm chilling, man.
Living the dream?
Living the dream. And today, we are going to be talking about success, and specifically how to create your own path to success. So, what does that mean for you?
Like, what does success mean, or creating your own path?
Yeah, like what path do you see yourself going down for success?
I think it depends on how you want to define the path, but if you're talking about, like, the education path or, like, just the practical experience path, it's definitely a bit of both for me. I think it's going to vary, like, person to person. I think you definitely need a little bit of both, but I think that those can come in multiple forms. For me, it's going to come in... I already have a BS in biochemistry, and I went to college for that. I'll be probably getting an MBA here in about a year as well, but I would actually attribute most of the value I have in the workplace to practical experience. But you need both for what I do. And what I do is biotech sales currently. So you definitely need a little bit of both for that.
I agree. For majors like that, especially, I feel like school and education is like super important. And not only that, but things like nursing, becoming a lawyer, becoming a doctor, you need a lot of schooling for that because there's a lot of knowledge. So going off of that, what I wanted to talk about, as you know, is the educational system. So how about let's start with you. What are your general thoughts on it, going from like elementary school to all the way through college?
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit. My experience with school from a very early age up until I went to college was being very bored with it personally. I didn't have to study a whole lot to get by in most classes. And, I wasn't like straight A the whole time, but I didn't really care. And I could, kind of pick up the book 20 minutes before the test and pass or, get a high B or something. So it wasn't until I got to university where I was challenged. And for a little bit of context, I went to community college for a year and then transferred to a UC, which is a University of California school. And only when I got to a UC was I like actually a little bit more challenged and also wanted to hold myself to a higher standard.
Yeah.
So for me, school was pretty boring. Definitely in high school, I felt like it was a waste of my time.
I can definitely agree partly on that.
Yeah. But at the same time, I didn't do a whole lot when I was like outside of high school that was really productive either. So
you mean like social wise, like friends and stuff?
No, but I mean like I wasn't getting out of school from high school and then going home and building an app or like learning how to participate in a global economy or anything. I was just going home, hanging out with friends, watching TV, playing video games, that kind of stuff. Maybe going to the gym or playing soccer here and there.
Yeah.
But I definitely felt like it was a waste of my time.
Got you. I can definitely like test to that. I would say schooling from kindergarten, maybe preschool, all the way through high school, I think is definitely a necessity, not just for like the educational portion, but to like meet people and make friends and stuff like that. And I think in college, that's also a great aspect of it too, is making friends and really getting out there. But to me, I kind of felt the same way. I just felt like after a while, things seemed very repetitive that we were learning. Yeah. Like by junior or senior year, the history and English that you're taking, and I mentioned this earlier, I feel like most people by that point, by the time they're like junior or senior or whatever, maybe aren't quite sure what they want to do, but have made some decisions on what they don't want to do. Even if you're very young.
Yeah, and narrowing it down a little bit at least.
Yeah, and it's the fact that you're still, I feel like you shouldn't be forced to take those kind of classes. I think, obviously, still take classes, but those kind of classes that you're like certain on, because you could replace that with things like learning how to do taxes, right? Learning how to write checks, learning more about how to sustain yourself in the future. Because I feel like we don't really, we take econ.
Something more practical.
Yeah, something more practical, like how to buy a house maybe. Something like that. Sure. Just all that adult stuff, I feel like I've always felt like that should be something that is mandatory or taught in all the way through high school.
Sure, yeah. I see what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's not a bad idea in terms of maybe reevaluating the school system. Not that, we have the power to do that, but I would be a proponent for that for sure if that was something legislative, to reevaluate the school system and give students more choice in what they're doing and add in some more practical components to that. And for some context for everyone, Sean and I have gone to the same kindergarten all the way through.
Yeah, so elementary, middle, and high school.
Yeah, and high school.
Big three.
We went to different colleges, but other than that, we've been at the same institution, but we've had different experiences. So that's something good to put in context. And then also, both of my parents are teachers, so I have a little bit of insight into the school system from there as well.
Got you. Yeah, no, it's been cool just to grow up together and kind of experience it all similarly. But yeah, going back to how education is taught in pretty much all of schooling, I feel like it's almost like a form of obedience rather than learning. And what I mean by that is a lot of school is you memorize this, right? You memorize a bunch of information, regurgitate it on a test, and then essentially just forget about it. Most people will forget about it.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a big I hate memorizing.
That's and I mean, I know with standardization of tests, they have to do something that's going to, they're trying to benefit everybody, because obviously they can't take one person and be work on them forever.
Sure.
Because it would just take forever. It's not practical. I just wish that there was a bit more of a creative path that people could go down, especially in high school, instead of kind of cramming everyone into this one group.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there with the school system is a difficult monster to change or to make efficient, because you are catering to every child in the United States. When you standardize stuff, which, that's, in air quotes, the only way to make things fair.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's definitely challenging to take, the bottom 10% of people and the top 10% of people in terms of where they're at intellectually at different times, and stick them in the same classes, or emotionally at the same times, honestly, and stick them in the same classes, same groups, and teach them as one. Would school be better if it was personalized to each individual child? Absolutely. The challenge, I think, there is a logistical and administrative one to make that a reality, rather than, we all know that would be better, right? And that's why I think a lot of people are opting to go homeschooling, and stuff like that going forward. Not to mention they get to spend more time with their kids, but definitely, I think there are things we can do to make the school system fit children a little bit better, and young adults. And I think that's kind of the thing I enjoyed about college, was you got to really pick your own schedules. If you hated 8 a.m.s, you didn't have to do that anymore. If you liked taking classes at 5, 6, 7 p.m., you could totally do that. If that's when you worked best, your school system could, align with that most of the time. If you wanted to take certain extracurriculars, you could do that. There's still requirements to get your major, but there's a lot more flexibility. Unfortunately, I think that, that level of responsibility is difficult to find in people younger than 18.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's all. Those very good points. And I mean, especially when no one's forcing you to go to college. I mean, when you sign up,
sure, right,
you're, you know what you're getting into. At least you should. Depending on your major, some majors are going to be harder than others. So,
and you quote unquote want to be there, right?
Exactly. Because you're the one that ultimately did it, and obviously there's going to be, and this is the part I don't agree with parents and whatever other family kind of forcing their kid to go, because I know with our parents' generation, right? School was very much
paramount.
So paramount to being successful, and I agree it was extremely important in being successful. But I feel with nowadays, obviously you have to be a certain individual, right? You have to be a more entrepreneurial type personality and someone who's willing to work harder. Because at the end of the day, being a self-starter, doing your own business is going to be harder than just going to get that easy 9 to 5, right? And I think it also should be made clear that people shouldn't just not go to college because they're too lazy or don't want to. If you're not going to college, you should have something you're dead set about. I want to do this. I want to be successful in this. And even if it's going to take you a while to like achieve that, I say go for it.
Sure. I both agree and disagree with you slightly with the last thing you said. So I totally agree. You should go to college. I would say it as with a plan. I think you need to add a bit more flexibility in there for me to agree with you because, like for me, I went to college and I was like, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a doctor. And then I was like, I don't want to deal with insurance and other stuff getting in my way. And I wasn't a fan of like the American healthcare system. And I didn't necessarily want to like have to, not necessarily like participate in that, but like have to have that be part of my job.
Gotcha.
And that was something I realized that I didn't want to do. And so I took my degree. I had a biochemistry degree. I was like, okay, well, what else do people do with this? And I adapted, and I did something with it. But my degree is relatively versatile. It doesn't like super pigeonhole you.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that's more of the thing is like you have to choose your degree wisely. You shouldn't just go to college to go to college. You should go to college.
I agree 100%.
To get a degree, and get that degree in a field that you're interested in.
I agree.
That being said, I think there are a lot of options after college to really transition what you're doing. For example, like I said, I had a biochemistry degree. I was pre-med. I was all that kind of stuff. And I went and I worked in an environmental lab. And it sucked. It was not my favorite thing to do. But I'm grateful for that job in the sense that it taught me what I really didn't like.
100%.
And I knew that I didn't like working. So lab environment, you're very isolated. You're working on something by yourself. You're doing a repetitive task for hours, and you're doing it every single day. That, I mean, you know me, that's not my thing at all. You know, I like variability. I like new things. I like talking to people. And I that job helped me identify that those were things about me that I wanted to see reflected in my work. And so I ended up transitioning totally out of the whole lab industry, and I'll probably never go back to it, hopefully, into the, commercial side of that business. And so now I get to work with people that work at labs, and I still get to be a part of the science and use my degree and my scientific background and all my knowledge that I built up there. But I also get to use my communication skills, and I get to participate in new things every day. And I mean, like, it's way more fun because I get to participate in like cutting edge stem cell research with 20 different partners at different labs doing all kinds of different, unique, interesting stuff. And it provided me the things that I wanted out of work. So I think that's kind of what you have to do going into college is identify an area that you want to play in. And then as you take jobs, and I think I'm very lucky to have figured that out earlier rather than later in my career.
No, definitely. Yeah, very early on.
But I think it's get into an area that you want to play in and identify how much, I mean, for me, I had to see how much money it made.
Yeah. No, money's a huge thing.
Especially with, the economy now and everything.
Yeah.
But looking at how much money your degree can make, is that a sustainable amount for you? And if so, and it's something you enjoy, go pursue it,
Exactly. No, I agree. So, essentially you're saying college, when you went to college initially, it kind of helped you figure out what you didn't want to do, which ultimately landed you in this new job.
Yeah, well, okay, so I think my job did that more. I think college, I went and I got a degree that I was interested in. Yeah. And that I knew, luckily I was one of the people who my interest aligned with relatively high salaries and good job scalability.
No, yeah, your field gets paid very well.
It depends, because when I was an environmental, scientist or whatever you'd want to call me then, I made $16 an hour. I was making as much as a Taco Bell worker.
Yeah.
And I definitely had the experience of, oh my God, why did I even go to college? And then cut, to now less than 6 months, after having that job. I had that job for about 6 months, and I make significantly more money, and I do something that's much, much more interesting and provides much more work-life balance.
So it all just kind of fell into place, after.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's another good point, I think, is that the school system doesn't prepare kids for the reality of life. You're going to go to college, and then I think a lot of people have this experience of they get out, they have their degree, they're like, hell yeah, and then 2 months go by, and then they're like, oh shit, my entire life, all these checkpoints have been lined up for me, you know?
That's exactly the thing. It's like the structure's there for you.
Yeah.
That was like
it's
me in
gone.
high school. You know, like you had like the structure. I mean, even in college a bit too. College, I mean, now that I'm nearing the end of it, it's like kind of a little bit more scary.
Yeah, well, college sets your goals for you, right? It puts that, dangles that degree out in
Yeah,
front
yeah,
of
yeah.
you.
But then
and
once
says,
you get
hey,
it-
go do these 5 things to
Exactly.
go get that degree.
Uh-huh.
And then when you get into real life, you have to set that stuff up for yourself for the most part.
Yeah.
And that I think is a little bit daunting to take on, not because
Definitely.
it's not something that people can't handle, but it's because no one's ever like, you don't have to do that with your life until you're out of college. Like,
Exactly.
all those steps are kind of lined up for you.
Yeah. I agree 100%.
And I think a lot of people go into school after college, get a master's, get a PhD because they don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it works out for some people, but I think that's a bad move generally.
Bad move in terms of going back for like more schooling if they don't know what they want to do.
Yeah, if you don't know what to do, pulling the trigger on college is probably not the best path.
Yeah.
In my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or on, you know, higher education
Mm-hmm.
than college. I don't think it's a good idea to pull the trigger on those things until you know what you want to do with it, at least vaguely. Like, especially when you go into higher education, because you have to specialize. Like, if I wanted to get a PhD, I'd have to get it in something more specific than just biochemistry. I'd have to get it in like virology or something, right? Which I could totally do, but I have to know that I want to spend 6 to 8 years on virology research, and that's not something that I would want to do. So it's not what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it's an important call out for people considering doing more schooling. Do it if you know that that's an area you want to play in, at least.
No, especially because I mean, me personally, I know a lot of people who have, like, say, like nursing, for example, right? Nursing
Sure.
takes years and years of schooling, like for yours too. But if you're like halfway, like if you're not like full 100%, like you know you're going to be still
Sure.
interested, like 5-6 years down the line, it could potentially be a waste of time if you're like 2-3 years into it and you're like, wait,
Yeah.
I don't want to do this anymore, but you've already spent so much money, you kind of put yourself in this hole.
Right. And if you want to look at it like a game or like a I don't know, like you're playing the game with college, like, or any kind of academic program, you're always better going into something that's going to give you more options at the end.
I agree.
And that's kind of why I did what I did, because I felt like it would give me the most options to, like, because a biochemist can go and do virology, he can go and do like all these different things, because it's very like base level. It's like learning algebra and then taking higher level math classes. It's like you got to have algebra to do that. So
Yeah, definitely.
definitely do something that's going to give you options if you're not sure.
That's like exactly me. Because, you know, I major in communication. It's a very broad major, right? You can go into marketing.
Yeah, that's the
You can
every
be-
option ever.
I have
major.
every option. And that's what worked for me, because I am a very indecisive person. Trying to work on it, but I felt like that major. I mean, I enjoy like socializing, like stuff like this. I enjoy doing that. So I figured, you know, I'd go get my degree, maybe learn some stuff along the way. And, you know, to me it makes sense. Everybody's going to have their own different situation, right? Like right now, personally, I go to Sonoma State, as I've mentioned previously, and the way I have it lined up right now is I will have no student debt when I'm out, right?
Very nice.
It gives me some experience outside of our hometown, meet new people, experience new areas, get to live on my own, and it just made sense. And obviously, other people it might not make sense. Some people might just want to work and stay home for a bit, but for me, it's just a very flexible, and my major's not extremely hard. It's a fun time, so you just really got to feel out what works for you. And some people it's not going to work out, and you're going to want to. It might be better for you to stay home and figure out some side hustle in the meantime.
Sure. Yeah.
But
Maybe that's
just-
the next episode, overcoming indecision.
Overcoming indecision, that would be a good one. But yeah, just going back, I mean, I think college is definitely the right move for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But
Well, and I, not to like discount college too much, because there's a lot of value you can get there, and I think it gives you a really good playground space to be an adult if you have the money for it.
exactly.
You know,
No, I agree.
because you have a lot more support systems in college than you do outside of college. Even if you don't have a strong support system with your own family, you can get those things at school.
Very much so.
And I think that it's a good place to learn and grow as a person.
Yeah, make connections.
as well as, intellectually or within your major, all that
Definitely.
kind of stuff. So I think there's a value there. It's just kind of like, where does that pay off for going to school? Like me, I would never have gone to a UC for 4 years because that wasn't something I wanted to take on financially.
Yeah, exactly. That's
but
what I'm
going
saying.
for 2 years.
Just depends on,
Yes, because I wanted that
situation.
level of education.
Yeah. No, very much so. I mean, yeah, and I know just like going back to what I was saying about like people feeling pressured, it's like, some people are going to feel pressured and then end up going and really enjoy it. But then there's going to be people that go and they're like, I hate this. And
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know, I just feel like going back, if you're someone who's like dead set on this, like if you got like what you think is like $1 million idea, maybe it'll take, a few years to pan out, but it's always better to start on that, like say skip college or whatever and start on that than go through college, get your degree, and then, you really think to yourself, I'm not going to ever do anything with this degree. It's just going to sit here.
Yeah. Well, what it really is like life is all about, I don't know. I think if success, you need to identify transferable skills and you need to build those skills and then demonstrate that you can transfer them.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what college is too. It's just a standardized way of doing it.
Yeah.
You go there, you build a skill, you get a piece of paper that shows that you build the skill, and then you go to a job and you do an interview where they talk to you about how you're going to transfer those skills. If you can do that without a degree, yeah, sure, some companies might not give you the time of day, but
Exactly.
if you want to build a business, if you want to succeed in different areas, if you're a creative, any of those kind of things, it's all about building skills and then making them transferable if you can. Some things aren't
transferable into like other areas. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
yeah, definitely.
communication. Like, I think people really discount that a lot. But if you know how to talk to people, you can get twice as far in half the time because you can make connections that'll help you out.
That's another reason why I chose comms, because I wanted to really like know how to really form connections with people.
Yeah.
Learning how to understand. And that's why I was a psych major at first too, because I wanted to really understand how people worked.
I did customer service jobs.
Yeah.
My
Because it gets you
entire
far.
time.
It doesn't even matter like, what your major is. You can really open up avenues if you know, not in like a manipulative way, of course. I mean, you can do that too.
Sure.
But like how to kind of work with people.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said for. I think people consider them soft skills because, like, people would look at, I don't know, maybe my academic background and be like, oh yeah, he's an intelligent guy because he's got that degree, and he got good
Exactly.
grades.
They
all that
just
kind of
look
stuff.
at like, yeah, you're whatever.
I could not have the job I have now unless it was for all the soft skills. The degree is like 10%. The degree is a baseline where it says, hey, he knows some biochemistry. He can talk about lab stuff.
Yes, yeah, I
and
feel
then
like
all the rest is what did I demonstrate in that interview?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like for most interviewers, right? They're really going to examine your character. And if they really,
it's called behavioral interviewing.
Yeah, which I feel like is super important. I mean, if they look at your degree and maybe they're not super impressed with what degree it is, but they see how like charismatic you are and how well you like interact, that's going to ultimately be the deciding factor, I feel like, with most
I think
job
the only area I've heard that
interviewers.
this isn't really true is computer science.
Yeah,
Actually.
I mean, that's a computer science. Yeah, you definitely want to, I would say, go to college for that. I mean, that's a huge...
Actually, I don't know. I think
It
I
depends.
was talking.
Obviously, it depends.
Yeah, I was talking more about the interview questions. I've heard for a lot of, and like I'm not a computer scientist. I have a couple friends who are, but I've heard their interviews were like very skill based. Like you had to be able to demonstrate that you could do
like doing
certain
stuff
things.
in the interview.
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you were like solving computer science
Which
problems.
I guess still doesn't really mean you need like a degree. It just
Sure.
means you still need to like kind of understand what they're going to ask.
Mine had a little bit of
But
that.
I mean,
in
yeah,
my
that
interviews.
would make sense. Yeah.
They asked
Yeah.
me to talk about like how would you position this product that we have. And so,
Yeah, and yeah.
yeah, I had good background knowledge that could support that, but I think 90% of the time, how they're looking for the right fit,
Yeah.
for jobs, and like that's if you want to go the traditional job route. I think there's also the self-employment route and all that kind of stuff. I think it's just good to state that like all of that stuff is very high risk, potentially high reward. If you want to be a freelance contractor, if you want to do all that kind of stuff, it's the least stable thing out there, but you can still make good money and you get some of that work-life balance freedom you might want.
Yeah. And then going off of that, just for anyone who's listening, I just want to say like, if you really enjoy your job, like you genuinely enjoy it and you love coming into work today or any day, and if you genuinely enjoy that, but the pay is not super great, I think that's like a fair trade-off. Like I know like money in a way can buy happiness, right? But I feel like if you I remember my old doctor told me this, Dr. Lloyd Bramer, if you're out there listening. He's he gets paid decently, like it's a livable wage, but he would always tell me it's like if you're super happy with what you do, the paycheck is just a bonus. Because at least for me, like having really good pay is a priority, definitely.
Sure.
But I would rather trade off being genuinely happy, like coming into work today, rather than like slaving away at some job that pays extremely well, but your happiness is just like tanked from it.
Sure. There's a balance to be struck for sure.
Yeah. I feel like you should. Obviously, there's going to be days where maybe you're not wanting to do that, whether you're your own business owner or you're working for somebody. But I feel like because I don't know. At the end of the day, I just feel like happiness is more important. Like that, you're genuinely, because you can have money, but then you're going to be depressed with that money, which I guess is good. But
yeah, I mean, I've always been a very like financially motivated person,
which is a good thing to be.
Yeah,
it definitely is.
Yeah.
I just think you should also, not you specifically, but
Sure.
like anyone who's out there listening, you should realize you also want to prioritize like your health mentally and physically, and know if you're just telling yourself that you're happy or if you genuinely are enjoying life.
Well, yeah, if you told me I could have my lab job back and make twice as much as I'd be making now, I wouldn't take it.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be worth it.
No, exactly. Yeah.
And if I was making like twice as much as I was making now at that lab job, I'd be making like what? 10, not quite 10 times, but like maybe 7 times as much as I was making at the lab job. So I'd be making like way more money.
Like 6-figure area in there?
Yeah, I'd be making, I don't know, like 250 plus, like I'd be making crazy money. But it wouldn't be worth it because I would dislike it. And here's the number one thing, actually, there's nowhere to go. I think that's another like component to this conversation.
Do you mean like nowhere to go, like in terms of like your job?
No,
growing from that, or
like growing from that position. So like at
Oh,
the lab
gotcha.
I was at,
Gotcha.
there was no upwards mobility
Gotcha.
within the company, no opportunity to learn new things, to do new things,
Definitely.
to take different opportunities, that kind of stuff. And I think that that's something, maybe not for everyone, but for me, that's very important. For me, is that I'm gonna have a job, and then when I'm bored with it in 2 years because I've learned how to do it the best it can be done, I want something new. I want a new challenge, or I want a new aspect to it, or something like that. That's something I really love about my job, is that it's always something new and there's always something to learn. Because if I lock everything down in 2 years and I got this thing figured out, I can either get promoted, I can get a new territory, which means a different set of labs that I'd be working with, new products, new people on my team. There's always something new happening, and that is so important to me.
I agree,
and
actually,
probably is to a lot of people, to have that kind of I don't know, movement within their
I'm the
their
exact
career.
same way, because I know there's, like my doctor, right? There's people out there that can do the same thing for 40 years and love it every single day, right?
Sure.
Come into work,
My mom's that way.
And they can love it, and like, to each their own. But like for you and for me, I definitely, that's why I'm so indecisive on like, careers and stuff, because I feel like if I like, once I dive too deep into it, I'm going to get bored. Sure. But like I'll just use like Ryan Thomas for an example, right? Ryan Thomas, my man, if you're listening out there. So we used to work for him. He is a business owner, small business owner. He owns a trampoline park, right? So he's owned that trampoline park for, oh gosh, what's the year? He's owned it 6 years, maybe 7 years.
Somewhere around there.
And the overall same idea of that place has never changed, right? It's always just been a trampoline park, right?
Sure.
But there's still been like, it's still changed over time, right?
Yeah.
He's added to it, people in there coming to go, his employees. And that's an example of why I feel like being a small business owner is so cool, because you have your same thing, right, that you work with, but it evolves over time.
Sure.
Where
it's also yours. I think
exactly.
That's a big part
it's also
of it.
yours too. So it's like your baby. You want to work on it. And as opposed to working an office job, right? If you're sitting in a cubicle, that's working for some big corporation it's going to stay the same probably.
Right.
I mean, you could get promoted, you could work your way up, but it's always going to be that same thing. Whereas like being a business owner like that, obviously it depends on what business you own, but I feel like most
Right.
of them, it's the same overall idea, but it evolves over time.
Right, and I actually think that kind of mentality is a lot more common at small businesses. But
Yeah.
for context, I work for a Fortune 100.
Mm-hmm.
They're huge. They're called Thermo Fisher.
For sure.
They're the biggest scientific supplier in the world. And my job's not like that at all. It's not like this weird corporate, thing where people go in, they clock out for 50 years until they're dead type thing.
Yeah.
Now, there are lots of corporations where your job is going to be like that. I'm just fortunate enough that the one I work in is filled with really, really great people that want to see you succeed. Like, literally every 3 to 6 months, I'll sit down with my manager, and he's like, what job do you want next after this one?
That's cool.
Like, which one do you want next?
No,
Where are you
management's
going to go?
huge. Yeah, it's huge.
And so the fact that you have managers encouraging you to move on when you're ready for it,
That's super cool.
which they don't do this like, well, if you got to work this job for 5, like he's literally told me, like 2 years you can be out and do something new, because that's about how long it'll take for you to really learn what you're doing, which I think is valid. Like 2 years of doing what I'm doing is like, I've, been at it for 4 months now, and I feel like I still probably need another 6 to really know what I'm doing. So, yeah, that component is important, and I think you can find it in larger companies, but it's hard.
It is harder.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, that's super cool. Actually, I didn't realize yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, management makes or breaks it, really. Especially,
yeah.
Especially, in larger corporations like that. And there's gonna be some out there. If you had, like, if I had management like that, right, it would incentivize me to want to stick around.
Well, yeah, and
Because you have that job security.
Yes, that's another big thing that we can actually touch on in just a second.
Mm-hmm.
But I've gotten the opportunity to sit down with people that are like 3-4 bosses above me. So like my
That's
boss's
cool.
boss's boss, and have lunch with them recently, and get to talk to them about like what their career was like, where they go, and they welcome those kind of conversations, and they ask me what I want to do next. Like, that's not just. I think
That's
it's
super
important to
important.
identify if that is something that is a culture at the company or is just a manager. And if it's a culture, stick around.
Would you say it's a culture?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
At my company, yes. And that's
Is that like with all your like coworkers too?
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I work there.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there are a lot of reasons why I work the job I work, but if I had to like try to narrow it down, is like culture, and then maybe like a subgenre of that is people. Impact. I feel like I have an impact on the world in a positive way. Challenge. There's good challenge there, and then money. I get paid well.
Yeah. The Holy Trinity.
And then also I'll say last one would be transferable skills. I build so many transferable skills in my job that, yeah, right now I'm working in biotech sales. In 10 years, after I have a bunch of experience, if I wanted to go try to be a project manager at Apple or something, that would be within my sights to go do.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's totally different industry, there's enough transferable skills that I think, because I know a couple people who are like 10 years ahead of me. They're like 35.
Mm-hmm.
And they're done similar things to what I'm doing now, and they're doing things like that. So that's part of what I really like.
No, I like what you're saying about transferable skills though, because like when you really think about it, it's like I feel like when you're going into a job or doing anything really, you want to think about how this could help you in other areas, right?
Oh yeah, and then you have to be able to demonstrate that value.
Yeah.
So it's building those transferable skills and then being able to demonstrate how those can transfer.
Yeah,
And you can get any job you
which
want.
I think is super
kind
cool.
of.
Even in early on, like high school jobs, minimum wage jobs, you should be looking for transferable skills. That
I talked about my trampoline park experience
Yeah.
in my job with a Fortune 100 company.
and I think it's a great mindset to have.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying.
And they
like,
loved it.
Like people with like that kind of mindset, obviously, it can be learned, but a lot of people are like just born with that mindset. And yeah, that's just great to have because it shows that you're always looking to grow.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, like I said, will just do their one thing and be happy with it. And that's fine. But I just feel like life can be a bit more exciting, right? If you're just growing and looking in your current situation to how it can help you in the future.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think lots of transferable skills, it's hard to identify while you're building them, but easy after. So like with the trampoline
Yeah.
park job, like I talked about that as an example in my interview, I don't remember the question they asked me, but in my interview for this job, they were asking me about like, oh, what kind of experiences have you had where you implemented a new system that changed how your work functioned, right? And I was like, oh, well, we did this at the trampoline park, blah, 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 whatever. But it was a really good example. And they're like, oh, that's a great example. Like,
No, yeah, because I remember you were always, like, trying to, like, get Ryan to do, like, new stuff and all that.
Yeah.
And some of it happened, some of it didn't. But that's not what matters at the end of the day. It's that you were doing it.
Well, and it's also that, like I said, there's the building the transferable skill, and then there's the ability to take that and communicate that to, like, a new employer.
No, it's huge, yeah.
Yeah, being able to communicate complex ideas or personal stories or achievements to other people is like one of the most important things that, like, I'm still learning how to be really good at that, but one of the most important things that I've been able to learn here and there over the years.
And see, this is exactly what I think should be kind of aimed for in school systems, right?
Sure.
Maybe like some class that teaches you how to like properly communicate doesn't matter, what field you are. You don't have to be separated into a class based on your potential major, but
sure.
But like, yeah, like I think
public speaking, like a public speaking.
Yeah, like
class?
maybe like public speaking or just whatever kind of class is focused on knowing how to properly communicate.
Right.
Just stuff like you were saying. I just feel like that should be more emphasized, right?
Sure. And
because
I think the flip side of that too is experiences shouldn't be discounted that aren't, like, oh, I'm in robotics club. Like, that's awesome, especially if that's what you want to do. Like, by all means, I'm not dissing on robotics club at all.
I love the robotics homies out there.
Yeah, but I mean, I think people look at, like, oh, I had a summer job at the water park or whatever. Uh-huh. And they're just kind of like, oh, whatever. Like, there are a lot of things you can learn from doing that as well. And I think that is so discounted that it's important to acknowledge.
Oh, you're saying like people would get like you're saying like potential employers or whatever. If someone told them that, they'd like diss them.
No, I think like as peers we do that.
Oh,
like what sounds more impressive to you? I was on the math and science club. I was in robotics club, and I did music production club in high school. Mm-hmm. Or I worked at a trampoline park job, and then I worked as a student manager at Davis or whatever. But one of those sounds we put more like value onto one of those. I feel like
instead of like what they actually took away from it.
Like because what did you learn in robotics class that you're using today? Mm-hmm. Maybe some cool stuff, and that's awesome, especially if it's applicable. But I think a lot of people look at jobs and they maybe don't acknowledge all of that applicable stuff that's in there. I agree. If you're young, my advice, which I'm 22, so I'm like I know nothing. Here. I'm an idiot. But what I would do if I was, 15 again and looking for work is obviously like it's hard to get a job. So get whatever job you can if you're in a spot where you want to work and that's going to be beneficial for you.
It is. Always start young, guys.
Get a job and try to get one where you're going to build some sort of skill that will get you to where you want to go or get you. Or even if it's something you're bad at. Like, let's say you want to be better at speaking with people, but it's something that you have a hard time doing. Totally get it. No worries. If you can, take a job as a barista or something, where you're talking to people day in,
just something
day out.
Simple. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's really, I think we discount it because it's not something all at once that you're intently focused on. Like, when you're a barista, you're at work. You're not intently focused on those social interactions. But doing that for like a year and a half while you're in high school or something, you're going to get so much better at conversing with people.
I agree.
That you're not even going to realize it, but you're going to get way better at it. So take a job that's going to either build an area that you're not confident in or build an area that you want to play in at the end of college or, in life or things like that. That's part of why I took like customer-facing jobs, because I knew that was an area a lot of people in the science field lacked, was the ability to take information and explain it to others well. Mm-hmm. Because I went to college, so many smart people, but you ask them a question about something and they couldn't explain it to you. They knew it.
They knew it, but
backwards and forwards.
But you couldn't explain it properly.
But they couldn't explain it.
Which is, huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ultimately, what people are going to, I guess, judge you on in a way. In terms of maybe like your intelligence. Yeah.
Well, I think that's what I mean is like, do like a gap analysis on your field that you want to go into. Like this is more like if you're going to go into college, but if you notice that people in your field are really, really good at one thing and not great at another, that one thing, if you can't be better than them at that thing, get good at all the other things that are, like soft skills or, surrounding skills or things like that, and be able to point to them on a resume.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And going back to what you were saying about like starting like super young and like going into like a barista job or something like that, I feel like a lot of people when they're young, like 15, 16, right?
Sure.
Will either like just not want to work because they're like, oh, I'm only young like once in my life or whatever, right? Either that or they don't think people will think they're like qualified enough to like do certain things, so they'll be like hesitant and scared. They won't want to go after some
Sure.
job. And what I'm trying to say by that is you're never too young to start. Like if you really want to learn something, but say maybe you're not old enough to do it, there's still like alternate routes to where you can learn things to where when you are that age or when you are ready at whatever age in the future, you have a leg up. And I feel like people they kind of psych themselves out because they're like, oh, I'm young, the world's going to think I'm stupid.
Yeah.
So I just feel like it's important because you're never too young to start things like that.
Sure. I think there's two sides to that coin. I think there's like if you're like really young, and this includes you and me, and you walk around like you know everything.
Oh yeah, people
that's
like
a big
that.
Problem
that
too.
is a huge problem.
Because
and I will say, like, you can be the smartest person in the room, right? But
if you're an asshole, you'll get nowhere.
That's true. No, that's true. If you're an asshole,
nobody
you'll get
likes
nowhere.
you.
But also, there's no way to make up for a lack of experience, right?
Yeah.
Because like you could be way smarter than me, but I could be extreme, like years more experienced in the field. So I'll just you can't know more about it because you haven't had that experience.
No, absolutely.
So I think experience is a very valuable thing, and people need to realize that they can't just outsmart experience.
Sure. Well, I think we place, like as a society, a lot of value on intelligence.
We do, like the United States especially,
like
youth, intelligence.
And I think that's important, to an extent. I mean, I went into the field I went into, and I was surrounded by people that were very intelligent, I still am. But I think what's more important is capable. How capable are you at things? And you can always improve your capability,
I agree.
in different areas, because if you're not book smart, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It
exactly.
changes what you need to do to be successful, I think. Or
like,
maybe
like alters your path, you mean?
Yeah.
I agree.
I don't even think it has to alter your path, but it's going to make certain paths harder for you.
Agreed.
If you have a hard time understanding like really complex science stuff, you're not going to want to do what I did.
Mm-hmm. Like you could you?
Over yeah, you could. It might take you longer
than the average,
or it might be harder, but you could do it.
Definitely. Yeah. Agreed.
And if that's what you want to do it. What I would say is, like, let's say you wanted to be a PhD biochemist, and science just did not click with you, and you have tried for many a year, and you just could not get your head around it. Ask why you want to be a PhD biochemist, and then identify those things that are attractive to you in that area, and then see if there are any surrounding areas like that.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
So for me, good example, I was like, when I was thinking about being a doctor, I wanted to help people and have an impact on people's health and safety, and I wanted instant gratification in my job. I wanted to be able to point at something and say, I did that, not something that was, a huge group effort that I felt like I barely had any hand in. I wanted to be able to point at something and say, I achieved that, look at that.
Yeah, I did this.
Job I'm in now, my company's like motto, tagline, whatever you want to call it, is making the world cleaner, healthier, safer. Mm-hmm. There's point one for me. I get to feel like I'm making a difference. Mm-hmm. Point two, I get a number that I get to look at, which is how much revenue did I generate this year? And I can point at that and say, I did that. So it satisfies those two things that I wanted. Mm-hmm. And so I think being able to identify those things that you want out of your degree or things like that is important going forward, especially if you're going to do something different than what you initially planned. So that's getting a different degree. If that's not going to college altogether, Identify those things that you wanted, and then when you're changing your plan, make sure to incorporate those things. If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. No, I definitely see what you're saying. Yeah, it is an interesting perspective. I feel like, yeah, there is a lot of people out there that will go into something that maybe they think they're really good at.
Sure.
And
well, that's kind of what I did.
Yeah.
I liked it too, but after I got out, I was like, oh man, what am I going to do with this now that I'm not going to med school? And I felt a little bit like I wasted my time, especially because I went right into a job that I didn't like.
Which, I mean, that's kind of the beauty of going to college young like we are. You have time to like make mistakes, and I feel like people also shouldn't be afraid to like make those mistakes. Like, you could go to college, right, 18 to 22 or whatever, hate it, but you're still extremely young.
Right.
And then you always have that like thing with college for me too, is if, you go, right, and you finish, even if you didn't like it, you'll never have that like what if scratching you in the back of the head, right?
Oh yeah.
And like some people's like, okay, I did it, I didn't enjoy most of it, but I tried it. And I mean, I guess, if you don't want to go to college, it's always going to be there for you if you ever decide to go. But yeah, I just think it's important to learn that you're very young and still growing, and there's a lot more time than you think, but also use that time wisely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point. There definitely is more time than you think, which doesn't mean, just like piss off your life and don't worry about anything.
Well, especially with like social media, right? A lot of people will compare like their own timetables to someone else's.
Oh yeah, that's I see what you're getting at now. I was talking more like,
and so people will feel rushed to like, oh my gosh, I got to finish school now.
Yeah,
where it's like
I feel that way too.
Yeah, and I know, same here. And I'm like scrolling through whatever, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this person's graduated doing their job or whatever. But you have to realize it's like it's not a race, and everyone's on their own timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is too is like I'm a person who metrics my success in like salary a little bit, which isn't the healthiest thing.
No, I mean that's a normal thing though.
Yeah, I think everybody does that.
Everyone does that to a degree, even if you don't realize it. Sure. Like some people may just think about it like subconsciously, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I went from being in like I don't know what percentile I was in at what point, but I was making $16 an hour.
Yeah.
And within 6 months, my salary is significantly higher. Like I'm making very good, like too much money for a 22-year-old, and it's crazy how fast that changed, and I have the same degree. I didn't get any further education. I didn't get anything else. I just looked for a job that used my skills better.
Yeah.
And that paid better.
Which is a thing. Yeah, you need to like, if you want to go the job route, just search around and, you have a lot of time. Just search around and you're going to eventually find one that really fits your specific qualities, I guess.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah. That and just like, it's weird coming out of college.
I bet. Yeah. I mean, I'm not even finished yet, but I can already like, it's on the horizon.
Yeah. It's
close
enough. It's close enough that you're thinking about it.
Well, because like we mentioned, way back, it's like, that's like once you graduate college, that's really the end of like any given structure.
There are no more checkpoints.
You have to make them. You have to create the checkpoints, and that's what most people struggle with, is because, like you were saying, they have this like the degrees dangling for you right there,
sure.
right? You grab that degree, and then it's like, oh shoot, now I'm at the edge of the cliff.
Yeah.
There's another cliff on the opposite side, but you got to figure out how you're going to build your way over there.
Sure. That's a good analogy. I like that.
Some stupid analogy.
No, I actually like that.
I literally just made that up. But yeah, you know what I mean. And hopefully you guys out there
Well, that relating back to social media is like some people get a helicopter ride to the other cliff.
Facts.
Whether that's because they
born into wealth.
Yeah, whether that's because they know someone who owns a helicopter or because they earned their helicopter ticket.
Mm-hmm.
It varies, but there are a lot of people who that's kind of going back to where you're saying don't compare yourself to other people. Because, for example, what I was getting at with talking about like me switching how much money I was making and going from something like I went from something I hated that I was depressed about and I wasn't making any money and was going to get me nowhere in life.
Mm-hmm.
To 6 months later doing something that's going to fast track my career to doing what I want to do, that uses lots of my skills and is super interesting. I have more work-life balance. Like I get to work from home now. It provides me opportunities to travel. I get paid way more. All these benefits, right? And it changes so fast that it's totally unfair to compare yourself to other people, because if I compared myself 6 months ago to other people, I would have felt super shitty about myself. And now if I'm comparing myself to other people my age, I'm probably doing better than like a fair percentage, right?
No, it can happen quickly. That's the thing.
Yeah, and like I kind of lucked into my opportunity, and you know, like I think there's something to be said for luck, and there's like nobody gets anywhere by themselves.
Well, and I mean, going off like luck, you know, obviously some people are going to be born into poverty, right? And some people are going to be born into wealth, you know, and that's just the luck of the draw, really.
Yeah.
You have no control. No one asked to be born.
Sure.
No one has ever asked to be born, right?
Yeah.
Right.
You're not wrong there.
Not
I
wrong.
can't disagree with you.
But no, my point is though, it's like you can be born into poverty, let's say, and still, if you are willing, obviously you're at a disadvantage, right? There's no sugarcoating that. You're typically going to be at a disadvantage compared to someone who's born into a very wealthy family that doesn't value hard work or anything like that. But I feel like at the end of the day, people who are born with less will in turn appreciate more, which will allow them to work harder. And maybe their situation doesn't favor them, but they're going to work hard, and school is available for them. You know, school's available. No matter your social class.
Sure. I'll take a brief moment to say I've been very fortunate my entire life to be able to, you know, go to decent schools and always have a warm bed and a dinner at night and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, like I've been very, very lucky and very, very fortunate and privileged and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So, you know, just to provide that preface. And I think that's a really complex area that we're kind of getting into.
We can just gloss over it. I just wanted to like mainly just say that no matter like what you're born into, there's always a road to success. Some are easier than others, for sure.
Yes, I do think it's important to really acknowledge how vast that difference can be for a lot of people.
Well, and another reason why I mention it is because say like you're someone who's more poor, right? And you are like looking on social media, for example, and you see like these people like, you know, flexing their cars or whatever. Sure. And that might kind of throw you like more. It's like, oh man, you know, you get down on yourself.
Sure.
Even though like in your situation, you know, especially if you're like a kid, right? You had no control of, you know, where you're born into.
Sure.
So you shouldn't, you know, put yourself down. So that's what I'm saying. If you're like, feel like you're at a disadvantage because of that, just know it's like, it's not you, and you should still continue to pursue whatever dream you want to pursue, and
I think the point
whatever means necessary.
The point you're getting at is it's not like an absolute death sentence.
Yeah,
you know?
which I feel like social media can like make it look like that. Maybe not even just social media, but like just, you know, looking around and seeing like, oh, these people with more money.
Right. No, I think I think you're right that it's not a death sentence. I do think that there is, like, just because everyone has, you know, free education or whatever, doesn't mean that that's education created equal, right? Like, if you are someone who comes from an impoverished area and, like, you have so many things against you.
I agree.
And I think that it's really important to acknowledge that, you know, their quality of life is going to be worse. Their education is going to be worse. The opportunities that are presented to them are going to be worse. Their experience at like the colleges they can get into are going to be worse. The first jobs they might be discriminated against more. You know, whether that's because of race or social status. Like, there are a lot of barriers there, and I think it's important to acknowledge that those exist. But I do agree. I think, you know, what you're getting at is like, it's important to try and be positive and find what your path looks like, even though you might have significantly more barriers in your way.
Yeah. No, I feel like,
so I agree with you there for sure. I just think it's important to also acknowledge how large and how many of those barriers can be in place.
No, there's definitely like a lot more.
Yeah.
But, you know, if like say you're, you know, impoverished and you can go to school and you can still be like the smartest one there. Like, if you're willing to like put in the work and, you know, say you get straight A's throughout, you know, you really work hard to get straight A's and then you get a scholarship, or say you're just, you know, a gifted athlete, you know, because some people are born into poverty but can be, you know, extremely gifted in that area. But like you were saying though, there is a lot more hurdles to overcome than someone who's born into wealth. But yeah, just the general sense of what I'm trying to say is that there is always a way out, no matter how like hard it may be.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think
essentially just don't, I just don't
Don't
want people,
count yourself out.
Don't want people to be discouraged themselves.
Right.
Because
No,
someone who's born into that could like be extremely smart, right? Just naturally, but then the world kind of beats them down because they're like down here, right?
Right. I don't want to be discouraging at all either.
Yeah.
Like I said, I just think it's important to acknowledge that there's a big difference in terms of like barriers and stuff like that, and like
There is.
and opportunities provided.
There is. Agreed.
And so I just think that that's something to acknowledge. Like, there's, by no means is that intended to be, like a downer or anything like that.
It's just, being realistic.
Right.
But
I think that it's difficult to tell people you can succeed no matter the barriers you face, because I think that experience is so different from person to person.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it's easier said than done. It definitely is one of those.
But I agree with your
true.
sentiment. I agree with your sentiment for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's obviously easier like to sit from a higher up and be like, "Oh yeah, if you just put in the work," because you've never experienced that.
And
like you can try to relate as much as possible, but you'll never truly understand.
Sure. To clarify what you're saying, I think as people who have faced some barriers, but not, a huge amount of them.
Yeah.
It's easy to say. It's like, okay, for example, if you take someone who has $300 million, their parents have a net worth of $300 million. Mm-hmm. It's going to probably be easier for them to succeed than someone whose parents have a net worth of $500,000 or whatever, all the way down to a net worth of debt, right? And there's a million other factors, right? Like there's so many things that go into the barriers that you're going to have in your way. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to acknowledge those, and then do the best you can in spite of those. Which I don't know. I've been very lucky where I haven't had to face too many really difficult barriers. Everyone has barriers they have to face.
Exactly.
And I've been lucky to not have to face too many large ones. I think the best thing you can do is try to position yourself to do well when opportunities do come along, even if they are significantly more rare for you than they are for other people.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And always like kind of remind yourself, like you were saying, that like you're blessed.
It's important to be grateful for what you have, for sure.
Like with and obviously some people are gonna have more to be thankful for, right? But I still feel like it's important to kind of carry that mindset.
Sure. Yeah, I think it is important to strive for success despite the barriers that might be in your way, if you're a person who's motivated by success.
Yeah. And me personally, like as I've gotten older, I've kind of realized more how like, lucky and like grateful I am. I'm like, I try to appreciate it more, like not, because I think it's super easy to take things for granted, especially when they just like, that's what you're used to, right?
Sure.
Like, and that's why I mentioned earlier, it's like when you have less, you appreciate more, because, stuff like just, like smartphones, for example, right? We carry these things with us every day, but then there's people in third world countries who that's their like dream. And then here we are just chilling with one every day.
I don't know if their dream is for smartphones. It might be for like clean water or food.
Not specifically that, yeah. But I just mean like that's like an example, right? Or like I guess
I get what you're
Let me
saying,
rephrase it. It's something that's seen as like an extreme luxury to them, possibly.
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, even you want to take that even down to a more basic thing, shelter, dude.
Yeah.
Like
I just looked at my phone. That was like the first thing that popped. But that's it. It doesn't matter. Whatever. It doesn't matter if it's a phone or whatever.
Food, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Even like basic food, water. That to us is like, okay, whatever. We just can have it.
Yeah.
But then there's other people that it's like, fight for that. So I think it's just what I'm trying to say is it's important to like, and I
recognize disparity in the world around you.
Yeah, and just like be like thankful for that, even if you've grown up with the mindset that this is normal. You got to realize that it's not normal in a lot of places.
Right.
Right.
I agree. I think it is important to recognize the benefits that you've had and the luxuries you've had, and
it makes you more appreciative.
Yeah. Well, and I also think there's two parts to it. One, appreciate what you have, and two, help out those who were not as fortunate.
Mm-hmm. And that's what like comes with like the beauty of like if you're someone who is put in like a high financial status, it's like having the ability to do that, right?
Yeah.
To give back, which is like eventually like if you or me get there and like you like are able to do that.
Oh, when I'm a billionaire, yeah.
When you're a billionaire, I think it's important to know.
I think you can do that without having billions of dollars as well. Now,
I know. I'm
can
just
you
saying,
have
like,
more impact by donating $1 billion?
That's what I mean.
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But go volunteer at your
you can do
soup kitchen.
I mean, you
old
can do
folks'
things
home,
without spending money, like you were saying,
all
like
that kind of
volunteer.
stuff. I think also another thing that we don't really focus on, like I think a lot of people, that's what they think of first. Oh, donate money, and then number 2 is let's go volunteer, and then number 3, which I think this one, like, just treat other people well.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you never know what someone's going through.
Yeah, or what obstacles they've had to overcome to get to where they are. Like,
and who knows, that could lead you to, like, say I'm literally just gonna make this up, but say there was some, like, maybe like kid in high school who didn't have many friends, but you made the opportunity, or you made the effort to, like, go and talk to him, and, like,
oh yeah, and then they start their own company, and then
they become a billionaire.
Yeah.
So I feel like my thing is, like, if you put good in the world out into the world, it's always going to find its way back to you one way or another.
Sure.
And yeah, like I was saying, you never know. People are very good at hiding things. I've realized, like what they're going through and stuff like that.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
people can be very good at, like, putting on, like, a happy face.
Do you think they're good at something, or do you think it's that they're bad at being vulnerable rather than?
Either way, either way, whatever it is, doesn't matter.
I would say it's number 2.
You'd say that? I would.
Yeah.
I would say it's probably a healthy mix of both.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But either way, whatever the case is, it's important to always.
I think people are bad at being vulnerable, personally. Like, good at hiding stuff is like, yeah, I guess that's a component to it. But I think. Well,
I feel like bad at being vulnerable would kind of almost lead into that.
Well, yeah, you develop the skill to cover it up because you don't want to appear vulnerable.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
You look at it goes back to social media thing, which I think it's so easy to rag on social media, but here I am doing
behind
it.
a screen.
Well, not even, yeah, but I mean, like, even in person, it's just easy to rag on social media, especially nowadays, but you see, like, social media is, and it's hard because the way our brains work is we think through things based on what we see. And when we're on social media, we see nothing but, like, the best 1% of everyone's life.
Yeah, it's a
right.
highlight
So if
reel.
you go look through your social media right now, it's like the top 1% of stuff that you've done recently, like, or ever, right? And so looking at that, I see, like, the best 1% of moments you've had, and I don't see the other 99% that weren't as good.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, we know this, right? Like, we all logically understand this. It makes sense to us. But the fact that our brains keep seeing that pattern over and over and over and over, it doesn't matter if we logically acknowledge that that's not the case. You still feel that way because your emotive response functions based on what you're seeing, not what you know, right?
Which, again, just tying it back into the whole, like, success thing, is, like, you can see that kind of stuff and it will discourage you. You're like, oh, I'm doing this, and, like, maybe you're, like, really happy doing something, but it might not be as grandiose as someone, doing whatever. And so, like, seeing that can kind of, like, tell your brain, like, maybe, like, you don't realize it on the surface, but your subconscious is going to think, oh, what I'm doing is not as cool as what this person is doing. I should stop doing this.
Sure.
And I feel like I've had that kind of a lot.
Right.
With, like, just, seeing what other people are doing, and it's like, am I really doing what's, like, because you look at them and you're like, dude, that's so cool. Like, what I'm doing sucks.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're in a unique situation, too, where, like, some of your friends have graduated college.
Yeah. Well, our age range, I mean, you have people living at home. You have people having kids. You have people having kids. You have people getting married. So, like, 18 to, like, 24, 25, extremely interesting age range, I would say.
Sure.
And, yeah, for everyone who is that age range,
I wonder if it's the same when you're, like, 30 to 40.
Yeah. If anyone would like to chime in on that, I know you can't hear me right now, but anyways, I know from what I've looked up, and obviously this is just the internet, right? But it's like people in their 30s say on average that they're happier than they were in their 20s, and then 40s they're happier than they were in their 30s. And
that's interesting.
Yeah, and what I can't name the sources, but just kind of just when I'm bored Googling stuff, it's like people, and I feel like it makes sense in a way because a lot of people by their 30s, right? They've, like, found their job that they might be happy with. They have their kids. They have their family.
I wonder how much of it is that, or how much of it is people getting complacent. The cynic in me says that there's a level of complacency there where it's like Do you get what I'm saying? Like, when you're 20, you're ambitious. You want to accomplish
yeah.
a million things.
By 30, it's kind of like bleh.
And, well, not so much that, but I mean, I wonder how much of that has been maybe, like, adjusted to be a little bit more realistic by the time that you're 30, and because you've been able to make that adjustment, you're like happier with it.
You've accepted it almost.
Yeah.
I think that is a big part of it.
There's more happiness there.
You've kind of, like, the situation you're in, obviously it's going to depend, but the situation you're in, if you accept it, you're obviously just going to be happier because you're like, oh, this is life. And then you kind of, maybe it might not even be a happiness thing. You just learn to make peace with it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of people are not happy with their situation, but they'll learn to make peace with it. Because they're not the same thing, because I feel like happiness is more of like moments, whereas like peace is like, obviously it depends, but like it's more long lasting.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I don't know. I think that's interesting to think about. Like, I don't know, achievement and complacency.
Yeah.
You know? And like...
I mean, I feel like even in your 30s, like comparative to your 20s, it's still, like a lot of people are still figuring stuff out, you know?
Yeah. I think something I'm trying to put in perspective for me is like, I feel like a lot of people in our generation feel like if you're not successful by the time you're like 25, like someone comes to your house and kills you.
Well, that's because of social media.
Yeah.
I think a large part. I agree with that.
I think it's also, I think because of social media, but a lot of people we grow up with are like, I don't want to say afraid because maybe it's not that, but afraid or unwilling or whatever, to be vulnerable, genuine, not fake, because I think a lot of people either see it as weakness or unattractive. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I personally like to be able to have conversations with my friends that are about, you know, the tough stuff and the difficult things.
No, definitely, like our generation is like tends to not want to deal with that as much. I actually read this book called iGen for my summer class, and it talked about like how more and more of our generation we're living at home later, like comparative to like older generations. We are a bit more sensitive.
Yeah, because we can't afford housing, dude.
But we're a bit more sensitive to certain topics, and you know, we're seeing like less marriage, or no, not less marriage, but marriage at a later age comparative to older generations. So yeah, it's just interesting because we're like the first generation to really grow up with social media. So yeah, it's interesting to see like all the drastic changes and stuff, you know?
Sure. And I wonder how much of that is attributed to social media or just like housing. Inflation is nuts. So you could put that on the housing market and, you know.
Oh, housing. Yeah, no, housing is definitely a bump right now.
Getting married later, like people are living longer than ever now. You know, it depends on like what generations you're comparing it to. Are you comparing it to people that were born like in the 70s?
Millennials, Gen X.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder, that's interesting. I wonder if you could find out why all those things. Probably not.
Yeah, there was a bunch other stats on there too, just about like she talked about, you know, like how like social media is like just kind of like corrupting in a way. Like I feel like social media, we've just been bagging on it. I feel like it does a lot of good in certain ways in terms of like being able to connect and share information really quickly, which does do good. But I don't know. I've always perceived it as more negative than positive.
The whole internet's a double-edged sword, man.
It is. It really is.
There's so many good things and so many bad things about it, you know.
And like I was saying, you know, we're really the first one to grow up in like the boom of it. Yeah, it's been around.
Yes, I think we're the generation that saw. I don't know. Maybe millennials saw widespread adoption of it too, but I think
to a degree, yeah.
I think we grew up like when we were. When did the first iPhone come out? When did
2007.
2007. Okay.
Yep. And
we were 7 at that time, right?
Yeah.
Ballpark. So, yeah, putting that into perspective, it's. I see what you're saying. I think a big part of it is we were the first generation that got technology in our teens that allowed that level
even
of
earlier
communication.
Than that. I mean, you look at like Instagram, Snapchat was like when we were like 11.
Right. But I mean, it was slow. It was clunky. It wasn't great. It is so fast and seamless and almost necessary now.
That's what I'm saying. Like we like almost in our early childhood, we went from like it not really being prominent, and then we've kind of grown up through it like exploding and being necessary.
Well, I think we've hit that, like, we've hit enough technological innovation to the point where, like, you can do everything on your phone now. That was not the case even 10 years ago.
Definitely.
You know, I mean, you know, shit, we're recording this on a phone, you know. So, like, it's one of those things where it's interesting to see how that impacts. And, like, you know,
it's interesting
I'm
to see,
a
like,
technologist.
So longer term,
Yeah.
Like, when we're, like, in our 60s. Like, it'll be interesting to see, like, how... Because, like, you know, Gen Z is, like, born 95 to 2015, right? So it'll be interesting to see how, when that generation, like, how we're long-term affected, like, when we're in our elderly stages.
I wonder if there will be more... Something I've always thought about in that, like, arena is...
It's interesting.
Will parents and grandparents be more connected to their kids because we've also grown up... Like, I feel like between me and my parents, technology is such a big... I don't want to say divide because that's not true.
Yeah.
But it's something that is so different, like, in the way that we live our lives. Yeah. Whereas I feel like when we grow up, I wonder if there will be that large divide. Kind of like how there was with people who grew up with the radio and then kids that grew up with the TV. Yeah. Right? I wonder if we'll have that... We'll have a lot less of a divide because... We grew up with technology because it was so ingrained in our lives. Mm-hmm. When we're 60, we'll still be really integrated with technology as much as you know, someone who's 20. Yeah. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to see.
It will be interesting to see. And it'll be, you know, just tying it back in, it'll be interesting to see, like, just, I don't know, like, what, like, you know, the statistics will be on, like, you know, job happiness, just stuff like that, just overall satisfaction in life when we're older.
I hope it goes up. I mean, hope so. I think with work from home, that's been a big...
Yeah, remote working is huge.
Big impact. I think it'll trend towards that. I mean, I have a whole spiel about work from home and why it's great, you know. Yeah, but...
We can save it for another day.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of things to consider for what you want out of a job. And which,
or just, you know,
success in general.
Success in general,
Like, for me...
Whether it be, like, trade school even, too, or the military.
Sure. Like I know nothing about what those paths look like.
Same here. So I won't comment on them too much. But just throwing out there, like, what other, you know, paths we see.
Yeah, it's a good idea to look at what's in front of you and what seems like a viable option for yourself.
Yeah.
For me, that was always going to be college. But for other people, you might not need college. You know, in which case... Welding. I know someone who did welding, actually, trade school, and they make, like, almost as much as I do now. And they really like what they do.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think they only work, like, 4 or 5 hours a day.
That's nice. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You're seeing more and more jobs like that where it's, like, less work but more.
Yeah, they make 6 figures, I think, or damn close to it.
It's crazy.
90-something.
Yeah, it really is just figuring out what works for you, man.
Yeah.
And, like, I think it's important, too, to, like, especially, like, you know, our age, you know, 22, and even a little bit older, a little bit younger, it's like you're still growing, you know, our brains are still developing. Even when your brain is fully developed at whatever 25, it's still important to...
Yeah, I don't know. I know nothing. I'm an idiot.
It's still important to, like, realize
I say that genuinely, too. Like, I think it's important... Or, I don't know, me
I think it's
personally.
important that your mindset about a lot of things is going to change, too. Like, you could feel, like, very passionately about something, but then you have to not be expecting it to change, but be open to the idea.
Factor that into your decision making. Yeah, sure.
Which I think is a huge, that people, like, don't, you know, you could be 16 and you're like, oh my God, I want to do this. And then you don't really factor in, like...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Your interests and stuff change over time.
And don't let that, like, discourage you from, like, trying that, but, like, just be aware. That's what I've recently, like, realized that is, like, we're always, like, you know, our brains are growing and we're still growing.
Specifics change, but the like overarching principles don't. At least that's been my experience. Like, I always wanted success and money and, you know, variability and new things in my job, and, like, all those things have stayed the same.
Same
but
here.
Like, maybe the very specific
I see what you're
areas,
saying. Those, like, variables of... Yeah. I got you.
You know? But, like, those big overarching principles have stayed the same for me, but the specific thing I wanted to do has changed.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's super important to, like, realize that, because I feel like that applies to most people.
Yeah, and I think it'll probably change again in 5 years, and then again in 10 or whatever, you know.
And we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
See what happens, man. Yeah. Well, are you feeling good?
Yeah.
Feeling good about
good conversation.
Yeah. That was solid. You got any last things you want to throw out there before we wrap her up?
No, I mean...
Any closing remarks?
I think
for the youth out there?
Sure. I think, obviously, I mean, it's the corniest thing ever, but it's, find your own path, like figure out what you want to do. But I think the number one thing is think ahead, but don't take yourself too seriously, I guess. Try to make a plan, but don't make it too specific that you're going to end up being disappointed, because stuff changes so much, so fast, especially when you're in that like 18 to 22 range. Like my life changed so much, and what I wanted to do changed so much, and the opportunities I had changed so much. And so I think make a plan. And don't worry if you don't stick to it, as long as you can see a path in front of you for the next 2 to 5 years that is going to give you some kind of advantage going forward, and you think it's worth your time.
I agree. And I will say too, even if you're older, right? Like you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, I feel like by that time, like a lot of people that have been in a career for a while think they're stuck. Because they're like, I'm like 50 or whatever. But it's like, it's never too late, man.
Sure.
You can change, like do what is best for you. Like life is like too short to feel like you're just stuck there. I mean,
identify those transferable skills.
Yeah.
Right.
Like you may not be, you may not have as much time. It's like, who cares though? It's like, do whatever works best for you, and don't be afraid to change, even if, you're up there in age.
Sure.
But, yeah, I think that's pretty good. I will tie it back into school one more time, just to kind of wrap it up. So for people who out there who are kind of hesitant about college, I will say, don't force yourself to go if you really just have a gut feeling and you really feel like it's not the best for you, and you have some other like project or whatever idea that you want to pursue. College is always going to be there. You can always go back to it, and you might feel like you're missing out, but like I said, if you have something you're very passionate about, I would go after that. But at the end of the day, you could always go back to college, and you can go through that and experience both. But
sure. And if you're gonna go to college, be smart about it.
Be smart about it. Yeah. Just know, like we mentioned earlier, know what you're getting into. Choose a major or something that you'll have, or at least you'll think you'll have, like sustained interest in over time,
or at least has transferable skills.
And
read the terms and conditions.
And just realize
negotiate your tuition, because you can do that.
Negotiate.
They didn't tell me that, but you can actually go to your financial office and like talk with them and change your tuition number.
You can. Yeah.
It's hard, but you can do it.
And no matter your situation, young or old, just remember you're never stuck. You can always change things up, no matter what that situation looks like. And yeah, best of luck to you all in that. Go find your path to success.
See y'all in the next one.
All right. Love y'all. Have a good one. And peace.